Hyperbole. It's a narrative technique of purposely exaggerating a fact for dramatic effect. So yes, maybe we're not talking about the greatest moment in all of video game history of all time forever, but honestly, for real, let me level with you here and say, I'm not exaggerating when I say that at least for me, it really was the greatest singular moment in video games and a formative experience of my childhood. If you're asking yourself right now why I'm telling you about rhetorical devices, I have to assume you didn't read the title of this video. To which I can't help but wonder what brought you here, if not my genius ability of video title engineering. Was it perhaps the colorful and expertly crafted thumbnail, or was it the sheer magnetic attraction you felt emanating from the unadulterated aura of my channel? Or was it the machinations of the YouTube algorithm and the pipeline it established entirely without my knowledge of, which now funnels viewers directly into my insane ramblings without preparation or warning? Whichever it is, I must assume that you have at least a passing interest in the Final Fantasy series, and if you don't, please take your complaints up with Mr. YouTube, as the outcome of your digital journey was not for me to decide or influence in any way, shape, or form. But since you're here already, you may as well like, comment, and subscribe, right? It's really no effort at all. It only takes the press of a button to change the life of a fellow human being forever. Who knows what could happen in this wild world? But we're not here to coax the viewership into providing me with additional exposure, but talk about Final Fantasy, one of the greatest video game franchises ever made. There are many wonderful entries in the series for one to talk about, but you know what? I'm feeling daring to do. I feel like taking a gamble. I think I'm going to utilize my superior script writing abilities to craft yet another video about Final Fantasy VII, of which 10 billion already exist. Superior script writing abilities, I say, and yet it takes me like 7 times to read that sentence. Isn't that amazing? Just the most daredevil thing ever attempted on YouTube. I should be getting an award for this, maybe a wooden play button or something, you know, just a little thought. I may be just slightly, obviously, a little facetious right now, but there is no denying that this video is mine, and mine is better than the rest, at least in my deluded version of the world, in which I am God Emperor of mankind and everyone must bow to my glorious radiant form. Actually, now that I think about that, I'm not sure exactly how fun that would be. Probably not at all, as my life would no longer be mine and I would make myself the subject of the evolution of the human race. And once again, I've gone on one of my classic tangents, of which generated 5 minutes of content without anything of value being conveyed. Now that I've been rambling again for minutes, what do you say we get to the meat and beans of the video and start talking about the actual game? Final Fantasy VII is a game that, as previously stated, has been talked to death, resurrected, and talked to death again for at least 7 dozen times for the last few centuries. But the game's not even that old, you might say, and that's where I may enlighten you of the historical facts that you have been so far unaware of. As in fact, Square Enix first released the game as a series of 4 scrolls in the year 300 in the Roman Empire, when the company was still called Quadratus Iniquus. That's a true story, look it up. Actually, don't look that up, you know, you got me, it's actually not a true story, a lie, utter fabrication. I'm sure you've already know that, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult your intelligence 5 seconds into the video. 5 seconds? I must have written that part of the script when I wasn't yet drunk on creative power. How could I have known I'd be blasting all of these highbrow intelligence words on the page in the meantime? Okay, so in regards to the original release of Final Fantasy VII, it hasn't been that long, but maybe the fraction of a century, which is decades of which the game has been out for. 97, the release was 1997, which means that it came out almost 30 years ago. Would you look at that? Time for Square to do a big anniversary thing next year. Needless to say, it has been praised, worshipped, massaged, anointed with holy oils, and enshrined in the upper pantheon of RPG classics by no shortage of eloquent of YouTube people. But none of them have my unrivaled ability to conjure funny words out of thin air, except this absolute clay-faced Chad over here. Look right here, look at him. God, he's so smart. What is there to still talk about? Why am I making this video, and why are you still here wasting your precious time on Earth when you could be filling it with activities, intimacy, and joy? Well, the answer to those questions may be that I like to yap about things I'm passionate about, and that you like to listen to the nonsensical blabber coming out of my mouth. Or perhaps you've just purchased yourself a delicious slice of New York pizza and you're now in need for some digital entertainment to wash those carbs down with. Well, put that slice away and swerve your eyes over to the screen 3 out of 9. I know you're not watching this on your first or second screen, you imbecile. Look up, I'm above you, I'm in your house right now. I'm descending from the ceiling to personally infuse a fresh perspective on classic JRPGs right into your brain holes. I don't actually know if there's any brain in your holes, or holes in your brain for that matter, and if there is, well, maybe I'm actually the least of your problems and you should be seeing a neurologist post-haste. But enough of the banter, we have things to discuss. One particular thing in fact, one particular moment in roughly 40 hours of playtime. One singular, seemingly insignificant thing that Final Fantasy VII did that made me fall in love with video games forever. But just because it's the first I played doesn't mean I think 7 is the best entry in the series. Personally, I'm a big fan of the SNES era. I played Final Fantasy V 6 times and Final Fantasy VI 4, maybe even 5 times. Started playing Final Fantasy IV last year at work around Christmas when I didn't take vacation and everyone else was on vacation, so there was absolutely nothing to do. Don't tell my boss, please, I need this job. I didn't quite finish it yet, still in the final dungeon. I don't know, maybe I got intimidated by Golbus's massive manly aura. This would normally also be the point where I make a reference to my criminally inflated playtime of Final Fantasy XIV, but I can't be making the same joke in every Final Fantasy video. But wait, this is the first Final Fantasy video I upload to this channel, so... well, we'll get to it later, but believe me when I say it's a midlife crisis-inducing number. To clarify, if it wasn't already obvious looking at the footage playing in the background to make the video look more engaging, but we're talking about the original PlayStation 1 version of Final Fantasy VII. This was, contrary to popular belief, sometimes a more complicated time. A time when a single feeble disc simply couldn't contain the entire magnitude of a game of this scale. Imagine that, limitations of technology. The last time that happened was like Dragon Age or some shit. I think that game had multiple discs. Oh no, actually, hold on. I just consulted the horrendous Google AI assistant and it tells me the last instance of a game having multiple discs was the remake of Final Fantasy VII. How conveniently apt for my narrative today. That makes me unreasonably happy, actually, even though I do understand you'll be quite simply installing the content on those discs on a storage medium of your choice and be deprived of having to change them while the game is still running. Which is an insane technical feat of which my feeble brain cannot comprehend. How did these Japanese people pull it off back then? They must all practice black magic over there and maybe even some Jujutsu curse manipulation. Who knows? I'm not about to retell the entire story of the game in this video. If you're here, you know. You probably played the game. You may have played it 7 times even. Who knows? And I'm not generating any profit running ads on any of these, so there's no point, practically speaking. But I think we should at least string together a coherent narrative to place you in the shoes of little old me as I was but a little twig of a boy taking my first steps into the wild world of video games. That is technically not true. I played video games before that, such as good old Sanig, Mario World, and Diablo, of which my innocent mind was utterly terrified. What, pray tell, are you to do in the face of such horror as a young child back in the 90s when our collective emotional state wasn't yet utterly corrupted and numbed by the machinations of the internet? What are you to do if not run away in terror as a massive red cleaver demon with big horns bursts out of a charnel house while your young subconscious puts the pieces together and understands that you're subject to be added to the pile of carcasses back there soon? That was an utterly frightening experience, and to my great relief, Final Fantasy VII was nothing like that, except that sometimes it kind of was. I mean, there's still terrible alien mutant abominations in the game who indiscriminately eviscerate dozens of people, leaving nothing but gore and blood in their wake. Am I sure that the media I consumed as a child isn't partially responsible for the questionable state of my overall sanity? This was my first experience with the series, and I was immediately enchanted and awed by its gritty and expansive world, larger-than-life characters, and of course all the shiny big numbers I could produce. Number make brain feel good. But here's the thing, I didn't even know about most of the world yet. The game gives you no indication that there is more to discover than the polluted and crowded streets of the city of Midgard. From the moment the game's opening cutscene presents you with a sweeping shot of the dystopian cityscape, you're primed to think that this is the world the game takes place in, and that's all there is. And let me tell you, in a simpler time without social media, large-scale marketing campaigns for video games, or spoilers around every conceivable corner, you had no reason to think otherwise. Understanding the context of the time is important, as what I'm going to tell you about wouldn't have worked that exact same way today. The game tries hard to push this narrative, going into detail about the city's sprawling layout, plate architecture, and different individual sectors. You are here in the city of Midgard. You will live and breathe in the city of Midgard, and the city of Midgard will become your grave. That's the impression you get anyway, which made it all the more surprising when suddenly the game is like, yeah, alright team, time to take the fight back up to the big bad greedy corporate assholes up in the sky. In that moment, you may already realize that something is off, something's not quite right. There's tomfoolery afoot and you're not sure if you're supposed to be happy with this development. You know the game, I mean, you know it physically. You've held it in your hand, you opened the CD case and understand that there's 3 entire discs in there, and you haven't even finished one of them. Fun fact, it was actually 4 discs originally, where the last disc contained the final dungeon only. At least I think that's a fun fact. So what the ever-living forks then? It hasn't even been 1 disc and it already feels like you're heading straight towards the final confrontation. Something ain't right here. What else is there? Surely you're going to fail in the end. Forced to work your way up to Shinra again in a massive 40-hour spending redemption arc. Surely that's what it is. At this point, you may still be convinced you'll be spending the remainder of your playtime within the borders of the city, but it's getting harder and harder to hold on to that belief. Because suddenly, you are in that building. What has been built up to be the final dungeon of the game. You do make it slowly up the floors, and it's odd, there's no major hurdle that seems to be barring your way. My young delicate heart was soothed temporarily when the group of heroes eventually got caught, thrown into prison like a bunch of common terrorists. How dare they? Wait, well, that hopeless situation didn't last long, for you see, an unknown maybe friend, maybe foe, mysterious unknown supporter figure annihilated all human life on that floor of the building, and was even nice enough to leave your cell door wide open without slaughtering you too. At this point, I was utterly confused. I had no idea where we were going with this, and it got even weirder when I found that the big bad company president had already been shish kebabbed in my absence. Well, you know, at least I get to fight his son and that stupid dog of his, though only the dog dies and his owner, the little posh prick, pieced out of the fight on his expensive company helicopter like Seto Kaiba. But that's good, right? Means the conflict isn't yet resolved and we have many discs of adventure left to experience. Okay, cool then. The big evil boss is gone. We got a new big evil boss, and now we're going to have to hightail it out of there before the entire blistering might of the military comes crashing down on us. Grab the next motorized vehicle we can find, do a few rounds of donuts in the Shinra lobby, and leave a trail of death and destruction on our wake as we partake in the coolest fucking chase sequence I've ever seen in my life. Mind you, I was like 8 years old back then, and the actual coolest thing in the universe was still a twinkle in the eye of Studio Gainax. Where art thou, Gurren Lagann, my beloved? So you swing your sword from left to right a couple times, divorcing your obstinate pursuers from their mortal existence in probably the most painful way imaginable. Like, I slipped on a run outside once, fell on the pavement and needed 2 weeks to recover from the abrasions I sustained. Imagine what falling off a bike at 100 miles an hour will do to you. But what's this? It's the end of the road and you're faced with yet another boss of the mechanical variety that is not all that remarkable, but it's cool that he's here and he managed to keep up. Good job, that was very fast. Everybody gets out of their respective vehicles of choice, of which there are only 2 really. There wasn't just any room for Cloud in the party truck. Cloud will remember that. We descend from the end of the road at the far end of the upper part of Sector 7 and... Excuse me? What the actual choco turds are you telling me right now? What do you mean we're on the outside? What do you mean there even is an outside? It legitimately never even crossed my underdeveloped mind that there could be anything else, much less that getting there is even possible. With hesitation, I push the analog stick on my light gray PlayStation controller and walk to the edge of the area to be greeted with the familiar black screen transition. And that's when it happened. That's where my mind was utterly fucking blown. This is the moment I fell in love with video games forever. Understand that at this point I had not played an RPG before, much less a JRPG or a Final Fantasy game. I was not familiar with the concept of a world map. I did not know that it was common for these games to span multiple continents. Imagine my shock and surprise when I realized that there wasn't just more to this game than I could have imagined, but there's an entire world to discover that I had never even conceived of. Yes, the impact of the moment was amplified by my inexperience in the context of the time, but listen, there's more to it than meets the eye. At the time, I didn't know what an overworld map was, and I was overwhelmed by the endless possibilities it suggested. What it is, in essence, is a relic of a time of technical limitations. A tool to make the game world appear larger when making open world games was still a pipe dream reserved to game developers of the far future. But they made effective use of that tool. They used what is a product of the technical limitations of the time to astonishing effect. You see that small map in the lower corner of the screen. You understand that the movement of that small red dot correlates to the movement of your character. You understand what that means? It means you now have a perspective on the size of the city of Midgard, the place you came from, the one that you thought was everything there is to see in the world and is actually a minuscule part of an entire planet you still have left to explore. And the realization starts to dawn upon you that you haven't even seen a fraction of what the game has to offer. I was struck by utter jaw-dropping amazement. I could not believe that after what I just went through, there were potentially hundreds more places just like that. From the confines of the city of Midgard, you're tossed outside into a blackened wasteland, soil scorched, polluted, and sucked dry of its life energy. You turn your head to see that in fact it's not the entire world that's been reduced to a shadow of its former self. There are lush meadows out there, mountains, vibrant forests, rivers, and swamps even. Maybe not the swamps, that place sucks, but everything else is equally fantastical and dangerous and ready for the exploring. For the longest time you thought you knew what the game is, but you know nothing. Nothing! But now you are illuminated. You've seen the light. The glorious world of Final Fantasy VII that's spreading out before you, waiting to be discovered. The world that made me fall in love with gaming. I've been playing a lot less video games than I used to. You know, playing 40 hours of Warframe a week just doesn't give me the same surge of dopamine it used to. Maybe it's because creating things really engages your serotonergic circuitry, and you start enjoying the sweat and toil it takes to actually craft a piece of media. Life has changed. There's a lot going on, and having a life that's an endless cycle of work and video games just doesn't feel like it's enough anymore. But it's because of Final Fantasy VII that I will never truly stop loving games, and I will never stop connecting with people through the shared passion of gaming. I couldn't even call myself a gamer anymore, but I'm still here putting my thoughts and feelings to, well, not paper, it's actually Obsidian. Really good program, you should be using it too. Point is that it's given me something I'm passionate to talk about. And hey, maybe through one of those videos where I yap incessantly about things I like for 20 minutes, someone else feels inspired to talk to a screen for no reason other than to channel their creative energies into something possibly worth watching. Anyway, that's all for me. See you later.